I think it's an interesting one. It's important, I think, when we are doing work on gifted and talented youth to look at youth who are already accomplishing and saying what are the things that actually they are doing that has allowed them to get to the levels that they've gotten to. And I think that's what you've done. What you've also done is, I think something that has not yet been done a lot in gifted education is that you've gone from beyond just looking at them to looking at brain functioning, right? Now we know that everything is governed by the brain. Our biology, our thoughts, everything is governed by the brain, but we actually have not done the mapping that you seem to have started. And I think that's a really interesting line of research to pursue. I think it'll be interesting. I think it's always interesting to do comparative studies. I think it would be useful you had the 100 students, for instance, who are really highly accomplished. I think it might be useful to look at 100 students, for instance, who are students who are not showing that, and maybe 100 students who are underachieving, to see what are the differences, because that then allows you to map, well, what are the levels of self-regulation, for example? Are there some areas of the brain functioning that are not firing as much for the students who are underachieving versus the ones who are doing very, very well? So I think that might be a nice next step in this work. One, I think to be able to demonstrate it, you're probably going to need to do some staggering. So you may want to start it, for instance, in half of the schools, because what happens is you want a control group. You want to be able to say that the students who got it in year one, we saw an increase in year two. With the students who got it in year two, we saw an increase in year three. So if you do everybody at once, and you see an increase, one can say maybe it was due to the program, maybe it was not. So you want to actually have a design that allows you to focus, to say that it is the result of the work that you're doing. So that's point number one. Point number two, I think it's important to remember about individual differences. We've just heard, for instance, a talk on inclusive pedagogy. And there's this idea that some people say everybody's gifted. But for instance, I think we have different potentials. Psychology is the study of individual differences. I suspect that even with a lot of training, I would not become the next Baryshnikov, right? So I think that the ceiling of performance for me in some areas is going to be lower than the ceiling of performance in other areas. And so I think you will see a general increase in performance, but I think some students with more potential are going to increase more. So not everybody is necessarily going to get to the highest levels, but I think what you will see is an increase in the general performance of the whole group, but there'll still be a distribution. Yeah, I study psychosocial factors that are related to academic achievement and to psychological well-being. And so one of the things I'm particularly interested in is students who are doing well. What are the things and the psychosocial factors that predict them doing well? And I also study students who are not doing well, who are wanting to drop out and so forth, and what are those factors that predict? And I look at specific factors, for instance, ones that are related to high performance, including things like persistence, self-efficacy, self-regulation, some of the things that you have looked at. I also look at time perspective. One of the things we've discovered in my work is that students who believe the future is going to work out, they are more likely to engage, to stay engaged, to work hard. If I don't think the future is going to work out, I'm more likely to pull back or not to give my full effort. So I study that. And of course, in the US, we have a big achievement gap among ethnic and racial groups. So I also look at cultural identities, so students, for instance, who are multiculturalists. If I'm African American and I'm living in the United States, if I have a multiculturalist perspective, that is, I have a strong Black identity, but I am also willing to engage with others, I'm more likely to do well because it's a multicultural society. Whereas if I have an identity whereby I am only going to talk to other Black people, I'm not going to engage with other people, I'm less likely to do well. And of course, in a context like the US, that makes sense that you're not going to do well. So those are the kinds of factors I study, and how can we then use that research to inform interventions for students in schools.